We were this morning in class. We were talking about different things that our church family has been a part of this summer. We talked about the groups that went to Guatemala. We had 2 different mission trips that went there. Our teens talked about some of the different experiences that they've had this summer. We talked about our session at Green Valley Bible Camp. It was an awesome morning just to hear all the good stuff that God is doing through us and with us here at Flagstone. I wanted to tell you about at Green Valley Bible Camp this summer, one of the experiences that we had just kind of happens every once in a while. In case you didn't know, I know I've mentioned it before to this church family, but I spent 11 years doing youth ministry over the Southside Church of Christ in Rogers. And there were times, especially early on in my youth ministry days, when I probably didn't exercise the best wisdom in some of the activities that I have planned for kids. But I would always have, or not always, but I would try often to have some kind of game or some kind of activity to help get the point across of whatever we were talking about that particular night or that particular class time. And so when we were at Green Valley this summer, one of the guys that was there grew up in my youth group, had older siblings that grew up in my youth group, and got to talking about different times where those games that I organized, I wouldn't say necessarily backfired, but got a lot more physical or just kind of went in a different direction than I was originally intending. I had a couple of girls tackling each other trying to get to a Twinkie that we had laying on the ground, and one of them ended up with at least cracked or bruised ribs or something in the process. You know, there's stuff like that would kind of happen every once in a while. But this one particular time we were going through the book of Galatians, and in one part of Galatians chapter 5, Paul talks about how we have the Holy Spirit living in us, and we have our own sinful desires living in us, and those two things are constantly in conflict with each other. And they're constantly pulling at each other and fighting against each other, and that's what all of us deal with on a regular daily basis. And I wanted to try to get that across to the kids in a meaningful, impactful way. And so I knew if I used boys to do this, the house that we were meeting in somebody's house in their living room, it would get torn up. And so I got 2 of, as far as just physical frame, 2 of the smallest girls in the youth group. And I had them come sit next to each other with their legs sticking straight out in front of them, facing each other, and their legs kind of running alongside each other. Does that make sense? And I duct taped their inside legs together. And then I said, okay, when I say go, you're going to try to get to that corner of the room. You're going to try to get to that corner of the room. And we'll just see what happens. Thinking they would kind of pull and tug on each other for a little bit. You know, not that big a deal. And I said, okay, ready, set, go. These 2 girls started screaming, like flipped over and were clawing, grabbing handfuls of carpet, trying to pull themselves across the room away from each other. And that duct tape was holding too, you know what I'm saying? And they were like screaming, and they would sit up and kind of slap at each other for a little bit and then go again. And I'm like, I'm going to get all sorts of phone calls, you know, pretty soon. But the activity resonated with the kids. I don't know if the point did. You know what I'm saying? Because then this adult at camp was going, what was the point of that? And I was like, you remember the game, not the point. All right, well, that didn't work like I wanted it to. But it was funny remembering that. And we were talking about, you know, just it was when you're in conflict with something, when something's pulling against you or you're pulling against something else that's trying to influence you. I shared that story with you this morning because I want you to think about that as we think about this series that we've been going through for the last couple of weeks. Is act, love, and walk. I want you to think about times in your life when you've been pulled in 2 different directions. When there's things that are pulling at you, and you can think of times just in your schedule. I've got to be here, but I want to be here. And which way am I going to go? You can think of times that like there's certain people you want to spend time with. I have to do this because of my job or my responsibility, or I sign up to be there, but I'd much rather be with these people over here. And you can think of all sorts of times, even just decisions to make. I mean, from the simplest things like where are we going to go eat, and we're pulled in different directions, right? To what are we going to do about where we live, about should I take that job or this job? Parenting decisions. Should we have our kids do this? Should we give them some freedom to do that? And our hearts are pulled in different directions. We've got all sorts of things that pull at us. We find all sorts of ways that we're kind of in conflict. And I want you to be thinking about the times when you are wanting to go a different direction than either the way you've been pulled or maybe even sometimes the way you should go. I know I should go this way, but I really, really want to go this way. We've been going through the scripture from Micah chapter 6 and verse 8 when God is talking to his people and saying, of all the different laws, of all the different commands, of all the different things you could be doing, here's what I want. He uses the word require. This is what I'm seeking for. This is what I'm on the search for. He has shown you, oh man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. This is what God is looking for. This is what God is on a desperate search for in his people. To look for hearts that produce these actions. And we talked about, we've looked at each one of these. We talked about what it means to act justly, to do the right thing, to be people of integrity, to show no favoritism, and treat people fairly. We talked last week about love and mercy, about what it means to be passionate about showing compassion, about seeking and looking for and enjoying opportunities to serve and to forgive and to do good things and be kind to people, especially those that don't really deserve it. And this morning we're going to talk about this last requirement of God, the thing that he's really looking for in his people. And he says through Micah, I want my people to walk humbly with God. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean to walk humbly with God? I mean, you could be thinking to yourself, well, God's invisible. I can't see him, so I can't see where he's going. And he's all-encompassing. I can't be everywhere he's going. How am I supposed to walk with him? I can't do that. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, that just sounds like a really churchy thing to say, doesn't it? Walk humbly with the Lord. Right? Which is a good thing, but it almost sounds like I don't even know if I can do that. I don't even know what that means. And it doesn't resonate with some of us. And maybe, I don't know, there's a time when, and that's talked about in the scriptures, when one of the kings of God's people is defeated by another king and ends up getting a hook put in his nose and is led all the way to another nation by a hook in his nose like they would cattle back in that time. Is that what God's talking about? I'm going to put a hook in your nose and drag you around where I want you to go. I may not want to sign up for that. What are we talking about when we talk about walking humbly with God? I think it's important for us to have a clear picture of what that means. If God says this is what I'm looking for and I don't know what that is, how am I supposed to be doing it? So let's talk about it for a second. When we talk about this phrase, walking humbly with God, there's two truths that are revealed when we talk about walking with God. And the first truth that we see is that God is moving. God is going somewhere. Our God is a God of action. He has a plan, he has a direction, and he's already moving to action to do those things. You can't walk with something that's stationary. I can't go, hello, podium, let's go for a walk. We're not going anywhere. It doesn't move, but our God does. Our God is not dead. Our God is not off some distance away and not interacting with us. Our God is here. He's alive. He's moving. He's powerful. He wants me to move with him. That's the second truth. Number one, God is moving. Number two, God wants me to move with him. I'm not supposed to be standing up going, go God, go do stuff. But that's how I pray an awful lot. Lord, I pray that you go do something over there with those people. I pray that you make a difference in those people's lives. I pray, Lord, I pray that you would send volunteers to go take care of that ministry need. That's the way I act a lot of times. That's the way I pray a lot of times. Give you another story about Green Valley Bible Camp. 2 summers ago, not this past summer, but the summer before, we had an issue with a couple of snakes that were in a kind of a place where there was a lot of high traffic, a lot of campers walking through. It was behind our cafeteria, and there was a long stairway made of these railroad ties that went up above the cafeteria to this hilltop, and there were some snakes over there. And as a matter of fact, one of our counselors, not one of our campers, one of our counselors ended up getting bit by it. She's fine. Everything's good. It's outdoors. It happens. But there's these snakes, and campers come down the hill one day, and they're saying, we saw the snakes. We've seen them. We know where they are. And, of course, I'm the director of the camp, so they come tell me. This church family knows I'm terrified of snakes. I'm like, well, let's not play with them then. And I want to stay away. And, you know, this other counselor has been coming to our camp session for years. His name is Andy, and he's very much into nature and outdoors and knows all about this kind of stuff. And he says, come on, let's go. And I'm like, okay. And I walk with him, and we go behind the cafeteria, and we go walking up this long stairway, and my heart is racing. And I can feel it's not just because of July. Beads of sweat are coming down my face, and I'm like, man, if I see this thing, they're going to see me turn and run. Everybody's going to see it. Everybody's going to know. But I'm trying to be brave. And we go up, and when you get close to the top of the steps, and where this stairway meets the hill, it's a really grassy area. There's some trees there, and a lot of like dead leaves and stuff are all around those steps. Perfect place for snakes to hide. So Andy gets a big stick, and he just steps in the leaves, and he starts picking up rocks and turning them over and moving them around. And he's on the lookout for these snakes, which is what you're supposed to do. That's what we were supposed to come do, right? That's why he said, hey, you, me, let's go do this. And I'm still standing on the stairs going, find anything? I don't see anything either, you know, and I'm ready to walk off because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to look for it. I didn't want to find one for sure. But to be honest, that's the way I am with God sometimes too. I'll stand at a distance and go, God, you go do something. Go do something about that situation. Go involve yourself some way, God. Let them feel your presence. And I think that God sometimes going, come with me. I want to use you to help those people. I want to use you to bless those people. I want to use you to make a difference. That's what it means to walk with God. Our God is a God who invites people to come along with him, to be people of action along with him. God is saying, I'm moving. I'm taking action. Come with me. Let's do this together. That's what it means to walk with God. To be in a constant connection, a constant relationship with him where we see things as he does and we go the places that he goes. But we also need to pay special attention to the other words in this phrase. To walk humbly with God. It's not just the action of walking and not just the action of moving with God. It's the heart that I move with. It's the attitude that I have in this connection. God calls me to be humble. To be willing to let him set the tone. To be willing to let him set the direction for my life. I'm not fighting against his leading. I'm going along with it. And I find myself sometimes, I'm confessing to you guys, I'm like those two girls with the duct tape around their legs. God's going, let's move in this direction. Let's go talk to these people. Let's go share our faith over here. Let's go connect with these people. And I am scrapping and grabbing a hold of the carpet and trying to move away as best I can. Going, God, you go do that. Maybe that's just me. But God says, I don't want you to just walk with me. I want your heart. I want you to say, God, wherever the direction is that you want to go, I'm going. And even if I have to follow, even if I don't know exactly where that is, I'm going to go with you. If that's what, I think we could agree that's what we're supposed to do. It makes sense. That sounds great, and that's what we're supposed to do. And yet, so many of us, myself included, struggle to do that. And why is that? I can sing the songs, and I can be here and worship, and I can be encouraged with all of you and going, yeah, I'm going to go out this week, and I'm going to walk with God. I'm going to walk humbly with God. And whatever he calls me to do, I'm going to do it. And I may do the exact opposite before this day is over today. Why? Why do we struggle with that? When we want so desperately to do it, why do we struggle with it? Let me give you a handful of reasons real quick. Things that keep us from walking with him, walking humbly with him. One is selfishness. Just being selfish. I'm self-focused. I'd rather do what I want to do and what I have planned to do and the way that I want to do it. And if God has different plans, well, he can go do his own thing. Maybe it's pride. It goes beyond selfishness. Maybe it's I think my way is better. My choices make more sense. Now, I don't like where God's leading me. I don't like that direction. That's out of my comfort zone. I don't want to do that. I can probably figure out how to do this better. Maybe it's just lack of control. I want control. I want to be able to steer the car. I want to call the shots. I want to determine the direction that we're going. I don't like God's timing. It needs to happen sooner or it needs to happen later. Whatever it is needs to happen when I want it to and how I want it to. I mean, I do that in my prayers too. God, I've already outlined the plan. God, I just need you to bless it. Anybody ever pray that way? God, just put your stamp of approval on it. That's all I need. That's control. That keeps me from walking humbly with God. Maybe it's just laziness. It's just, God's leading in a direction that's going to take a lot of effort. And let's be honest, I'm not willing to do it. I'd rather let somebody else go do that. And I can rationalize it. I can call a lot of different things, but it's going to interrupt my routine and my comfort zone. And let's just be honest, I'm just lazy. Maybe it's fear, which is kind of the same thing in the same realm as laziness, but it's not that I don't want to give the effort. I'm scared to. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what the end result is going to be. I don't know how people are going to react. I've got my nice, safe comfort zone. I've got my bubble. And it's well protected and well insulated, and I just want to stay here. Maybe it's ignorance. Maybe for the first time, some of you this morning are going, I didn't know I was supposed to be looking for God's direction. I didn't know that that's what God was calling me to do. I didn't know that I was supposed to be looking for his will and seeking it and trying to do it, much less surrender to it. Maybe, this might sound kind of odd, but maybe I don't do it almost out of spite. You ever bargain with God? You ever say, God, if you bless this, if you answer this prayer in this way, Lord, I'll do whatever you want me to. I'll go to missions in the Congo. I'll give thousands of dollars. I'll do whatever if you do this. And if God doesn't do that, what do we do? Well, then I ain't doing what I said I was going to do either. You don't bless me, I'm not going to help you. And we refuse to walk with God out of spite. That's just a handful of reasons. You could probably come up with more. Different things that keep us from moving in the direction that God is calling us to move, that keeps us from being in a connection with him. And we want to choose our own path and walk our own way instead. So how do I fix that? How do I get better at that? We can spend a whole lot of time talking about how to just even have that connection, that walk with God in the first place. And we've already addressed it some in the last couple of weeks when we talked about mercy and talked about acting justly. And so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that this morning. I want you to know how important it is to spend time with the Word and to spend time in prayer and to spend time with other people who are watching where God is going so that I can see it too. I need to have that connection. I need to be on that walk with him. But even more so, how do I get better at walking humbly with him, at walking where he's walking? Let me give you some action steps real quick and I'll be done. If I'm going to walk humbly with God on a regular basis, on a daily basis, one thing that I'm probably going to have to do is change my driver. I have just completed the training of my last child in driving a vehicle. He passed the test. He's got the little car with his picture on it. He's good to go. Now, I still got to be in the car with him. He's not old enough yet. I still got to be in the car with him when he drives. But it doesn't matter if it's him or either of my other boys, even my own wife sometimes. If I'm not behind the wheel, it's a nerve-wracking thing. My kids make fun of me. I don't do it to Christy very much anymore. I still do it to my kids, though. I try to be a little more subtle about it, but I need my set of pedals over on the passenger side. Anybody else? I don't need the wheel. I just need the pedals. And they'll laugh at me when I do it as they're coming up to the stoplight, and I'm mashing, man. I'm like, this is not slowing down. I want to be in control. I want to be the driver. And it's hard for me to let go and let somebody else do that and me be along for the ride. But you know what? In my spiritual walk, in my daily walk, my relationship with God, that's what I need to do. I need to let him be the driver. I need to let him call the shots. And if I'm going to get better at walking humbly with God, I may have to change my driver. It may be me. I may have to be humble enough to say, God, I've been calling the shots for way too long. I've been setting the course for way too long, and I'm ready for you to do that. When I went to India this year, if you've ever been to foreign countries, a lot of times the way they drive there is not the way they drive here. I mean, you can say that for different parts of our own country, right? I mean, go to the north or go to California, it's different than Arkansas. So I get it. But over in India, man, lines in the, lanes, those are suggestions. It's kind of, if you feel like staying in the lane, go ahead and be in the lane. But if not, don't worry about it. And it's just go. And if you feel like passing somebody, pass them. And if somebody's passing somebody and they're coming at you, one of y'all's got to figure out how to get over on the side of the road so that you don't run into each other. And they kind of figure that out. Again, I'm not driving. I'm along for the ride while we're riding through India. And I'm sweating. Like there were some times where we're going to die. This is it right here. And I just close my eyes. I just sit back, okay, here it comes. Wait for the impact. Because I wasn't in control. But you know what? The guy who was driving was experienced. He knew exactly where he was going. And he knew exactly how to get there. And he knew how to get me there safely. And he may not have done it how I would have done it. And he may not have gone the exact route that I would have gone, although I wouldn't have even known where we were going. But he got us there. And I trusted him. And that's what I have to do with God as well. I let God in the driver's seat. I let him take control. He knows where he's going. He knows the best way to get there. And I just need to let him take me along for the ride. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11, verse 29 and 30, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I'm gentle and humble in heart. You will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If you don't know what a yoke is, back in this time, it would be basically like a big board that you would lay across a couple of oxen and attach them to it. And then you got the reins that are attached to that. And you just steer them where you want them to go. That's what Jesus says, I want you to let me do. Take my yoke upon you. Let me call the shots. Let me direct your life. Let me take care of the decisions. Let me do that. And the promise is, if you let me do that, things are going to go a whole lot better. This yoke, this direction I'm leading you is actually going to bless you. It's going to be good for you. But here's the key thing that I don't want you to miss. I missed for a long time when I read this scripture. He says, take my yoke upon you. He doesn't put it on us. Jesus Christ doesn't say, okay, stand there, let me fasten this to you, and now I'm going to make you go where I want you to. It's my choice. You are welcome to take my yoke on you and let me set the direction. But it's your choice to do that. Does that make sense? It's my choice to let God be the driver. It's my choice to let him call the shots. Am I willing to do that? I'm going to have to change my driver. I'm going to have to change my mindset. I'm going to have to change how I feel about things and the attitude that I have in certain situations. The world that we live in says, look out for yourself and yourself only. It says, assume the worst in people. No matter who you meet, assume that they're going to let you down. Assume that they're just bad people, that they're only looking out for themselves. You need to lie, you need to cheat, you need to manipulate to get whatever you want. Your status, your popularity, and the amount of stuff that you have is the most important thing in life. That's what gives you true value. You know what? Someone else has time to volunteer. Somebody else has time to lend a hand. You don't need to worry about that. People don't want to hear your story. People they already have their preconceived ideas about Christianity. They don't want to know about Jesus and his presence in your life. You hear all these different messages. We are bombarded with these things on a daily basis. And it affects the way we think. It affects the way that we view other people. It affects the way we view our world. Paul says in Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, don't be like the rest of the world. Don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by what? By the renewing of your mind. Change the way you think. Change your mindset. Once you do that, you'll be able to test and prove what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. You'll see the direction that God is going when you change how you feel about the world. When you change how you feel about yourself. When you change your mindset and the way you think about the things that God is calling you to do and the people that he's calling you to touch, it will change your actions. You will be a lot better at walking humbly with God when you change what you think about that walk. What you think about your relationship with him and your relationship with the rest of the world. And along that line, I'm also going to have to change my vision. If I'm going to change how I walk with God through this world, I'm going to have to change how I see this world. Jesus' disciples, man, read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Read through every single one of those books, and you see Jesus' disciples on a regular basis seeing needy people, people in need, seeing them as a hassle, seeing children as a nuisance, seeing those sinners as people to be avoided. And Jesus saw the exact opposite of that. When he saw people in need, he saw opportunities. He saw opportunities to serve and to bless and to connect. When he saw kids, he was like, awesome, sermon time over, bring me the kids. When he saw sinners, when he saw the people that you weren't supposed to be hanging out with, he jumped right in the middle of them. Hey man, let's eat, let's talk, let's share. He had a different vision, a different way that he viewed the people around him and the world around him, and he called his disciples to do the same thing. He says in Luke chapter 11, verse 34, your eye is a lamp of your body. When your eyes are healthy, your whole body is full of light. When they're unhealthy, your body is also full of darkness. Your actions follow your vision. And if I'm limited in how I see things, if I'm limited in how I see you, how I see this church, how I see our community, how I see my neighbors, how I see other students at school, if I'm limited in that, then I'm going to be limited in how I allow God to use me in those different places. My body is going to do what I see for me to do. I'm going to go to action when I see there's action to be taken. And if I got my blinders on and I'm not looking, and I'm really trying not to look because that's going to get me out of my comfort zone, that's going to cause me to have to do things that I'm uncomfortable with, then I'm not going to do those things. Multiple times. I can think of one in particular where Jesus looked at his disciples and people standing around and saying, do you see this person? And a lot of times everybody was looking at him. It was a weird, awkward social situation. And Jesus was saying, no. Do you see this person? Do you see their heart? Do you see their needs? Do you see where they are in their life? Do you see how you can make a difference? If I'm going to walk with God, I'm going to have to change how I see the world that I'm walking through. I'm going to have to start looking at people and situations the way Jesus would. I'm going to need to see what he is already doing and join him in it. It's a really quick summation of what it means to walk humbly with God. And I'll tell you this. It's a whole lot easier said than done. And we can talk an awful lot about it, but we have to have the discipline to do it. I want to wrap up with this morning. You guys have done a great job paying attention. I want to wrap up with this. There's a place, I don't even know, somewhere east of Rogers is all I know, off some highway called the Ozark Natural Science Center. Anybody ever heard of that before? Ozark Natural Science Center, anybody ever been to it before? Okay. At least the elementary kids in the Rogers School District, probably some other school districts as well, we'll go there and spend the night. They'll go on nature hikes. They'll learn about animals and nature and leaves and different things. And I've gone as a chaperone on this trip 3 different times. And one of the things that we always did every single time I went, you had just a group of students, not the whole collection of your school altogether, but just your little group of kids that you were helping to be in charge of. And you went on a night hike. And you go walking through the woods that you'd already walked through earlier in the day. You go walking back through them again at night. But the only person that has a flashlight is the person that's on staff there at ONSC. And he or she knows where they're going. And they got a flashlight if they need it. But they turn it off quite often. You just kind of walk blind through the woods. And you have to rely on this person that's leading you. He knows where he's going. She knows where the path is. And I'm stuck walking through the darkness, experiencing everything around me, but following their lead. Does that make sense? This is what God's calling us to. Folks, we live in a fallen, broken, dark world. We live in a world that is full of cynicism and hate and racism and selfishness, disease, lies, abuse, fear. And we're trying to walk through it. We're trying to survive it. And we have a God who calls to us and says, I've got light. Walk with me. Stick with me. I'll get you through it. And not only will I get you through it, I'll use you to bring other people through it as well. We'll get through it together. That's what John's getting at in 1 John chapter 1, verse 7. He says, if we walk in the light of God and stay in connection, relationship with him, the blood of Jesus, his son, purifies us from all sin. We're going to trip. We're going to stumble. We're going to walk into a tree that we didn't even see. But we stick with God. We walk in his light. He's going to bless us. He's going to forgive us. He's going to take care of us. He's going to use us to bless other people. So let's start today. Let's not wait till tomorrow. Let's not wait till school starts. Let's not wait until after Labor Day. Let's start today. Today, God, I'm going to commit. I'm going to commit to walk with you. And I may stumble and I may get off path, but I'm going to walk with you. Can we make that commitment together? Some of you here this morning never made a commitment to God like that before. You don't know what it's like to be his child. You haven't confessed his name. You haven't been baptized in the blood of his son. Today's the day to do that. Today's the day to say, I've been walking on my own for too long. I'm ready to walk with you, Lord. And we can help make that happen. And we're going to stand together in just a second. We're going to sing a song together. And while we're standing, it'll be easy for you to come down and make that need known. If you are sitting there this morning going, man, being really honest, it's been a long time since I've actually stayed in connection and walked with God. I've been pulling against him for a long time, and I'm ready to be done with that. Share that with us. You're surrounded by a bunch of people who struggle with the same thing, and we'll work on it together. But if you have a need and we can help on your walk, we want to do that. While together we stand and sing.
Open my heart.